Today, I'm speaking with Claire. She talks to me about the struggles she faced with breastfeeding after her first baby and even going in to seek medical care, which resulted in a D&C after a lengthy time in hospital. With their second baby, Claire speaks of her choice to take this mothering journey solo. After a few attempts of using donor sperm from a man found via Facebook, Claire wasn't getting pregnant. A dear friend of hers offered to assist her, and on the first insemination attempt, her daughter was conceived. Claire also speaks to the experience of seeking assistance in the hospital nearing 39 weeks with this second babe and getting admitted for an induction. Claire then checks herself out of the hospital after signing an AMA against medical authority and then birthed her baby 1 week later in her freedom at home. Claire has two very incredible stories to share with us today about her decisions to birth both of her children free of the medical system, while still engaging in the medical system at times when she felt necessary, but not allowing them to leave her powerless. Hi, Claire. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I've been thinking about this. So, yeah, I was actually talking to a friend and I was like, I would love to share my birth story. I don't know where to share it. And she mentioned you, and I was like, this is amazing. So,
Oh, yay. Well, I'm so
yeah.
happy to have you here and very excited to hear your birth stories. So, let's just get right into it. So, the first question that I want to ask you is, what is the ancestry and lineage that you're passing on to your children?
So, I'm a Puerto Rican. Both my parents are from Puerto Rico. They were born and raised here, but my grandparents were all of them were born and raised in Puerto Rico. My first daughter is she's full Puerto Rican, and my second daughter is half Jamaican.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Mm.
And then the second question that I'd like to ask you is, where does your motherhood journey begin?
So my motherhood journey, I think the first time I really was considered motherhood, I have a memory that really stands out to me.
Mhm.
Um, I was at a children's birthday party, and I was sitting. I when I was younger, I really liked to sit with the adults. I like to sit around the adults and listen to the adult conversation. I didn't like to hang out with the kids.
Mhm.
And so I was around a few pregnant women. I think two of them were pregnant and the rest of them were mothers. One had a small baby, and they started to talk about birth, which I thought was so exciting
Mm.
because I'm just like, I don't know anything about birth. And pregnancy just seems so beautiful and magical. And on that day I learned about episiotomy for the first time.
Oh, wow. And how old were you? Do you
I
remember?
I think I might have been around 12. I was either a tween or a teenager. I have a feeling I was around 12 or something like that.
Mm.
And yeah, I had no idea. I mean, um my youngest sister was born via C-section, so I knew about C-sections, but I didn't know about episiotomies. And
Mm.
I just didn't really understand how something so beautiful and magical like pregnancy could could end in such a horrific way. It
Mhm.
didn't make any sense to me at all. Um, so yeah, that was like a little seed. I feel like that was planted when I was really young.
Mm.
And that fully blossomed when I got much older and decided to have children of my own.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I've been married twice. I think my first marriage I considered having is when I started to consider having children. I was married to a woman, so we were thinking about like how we would actually make that happen, and considering using a close friend of hers. And
Mm.
um so that relationship um did not last. But what so something that happened in that relationship was that we ended up taking care of her cousin
Mhm.
for for a short period of time, her teenage cousin. And so that was kind of like a little taste of motherhood not quite, but I mean, but we were basically raising this girl for a short period of time.
Hmm.
It was not a good situation. And I feel like raising a child with somebody can be really illuminating.
Okay.
It can really, so there were some things that it was difficult for me to notice that were happening within my relationship. I saw them play out in her relationship with that child,
Uh,
and manipulation and control and all of that. So long story short, that marriage ended in divorce.
mhm.
um and so then so then yeah, we got divorced, and then it wasn't long after the ending of that relationship I met the father of my first child.
Mhm.
um and I think that, like, I kind of knew that I wanted children, but I didn't really feel like I wanted children, I think, until I met him. I
Okay.
saw him and I was like, I want to have all his babies. And it wasn't like a celebrity. I feel like I felt that way for like celebrities. I want to have, I would just say it joking, but I was like, no, I want to have this man's babies.
Hmm.
And so yeah, so we started dating, and then I think a year after we got married in 2017, and I got pregnant I think July 2018.
Hmm.
Um yeah, I was like in my mid 30s, and I'm just like, all right, if I'm gonna do this, I gotta do this now.
Hmm.
There's no point in waiting anymore. So yeah, so that's kind of where that started. Um and then so I started looking even before I got pregnant. I started learning about birth center birth and home birth, and then I found out about free birth. And
Hmm.
so I kind of made a decision that I wanted to free birth before I even got pregnant.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, which I feel is actually not, it's not very common. Most women have
No.
really bad first, hospital birth, and then they go on to free birth. But I was like, no, maybe it's my perfection, I'm a perfectionist. So maybe it's like, I want to do things right the first time.
Hmm. And I love
um,
that because you're so right. Many women that come to free birth, they usually get there because of their traumatic birth stories from the past. It is a little, not now, as like the free birthing movement, birth outside the system movement is growing, but it is still that thing
Mhm.
where first time mothers, they'll still kind of maybe say, oh, maybe we'll go with a, medical midwife just because it's our first baby. If
Right.
everything goes well the first time, then we'll do the birth outside the system the second time. So it's really amazing
Yeah.
that you just knew right off the bat. We're like, nope, first time, I'm doing it this way. I love that.
Well, I think so. When I actually got pregnant, then I was just like, let me see what is out there, like as far as midwives were concerned. I
Mm-hmm.
think it still was a hard decision to make, and I felt like it
Mm-hmm.
was a decision I had to continue to make
Mm-hmm.
in my pregnancy, because it was scary. It's like, I've never given birth before. I don't know exactly what to expect, and
Mm-hmm. Totally.
but I knew that I was like, the hospital is just not the place. Like, I know it's not a good place for me to give birth. And then I was learning about midwives. So I did. I think I like spoke with maybe two midwives.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing was like, I also like really could not afford a midwife in New York City.
Oh,
Um,
okay, yeah.
yeah, they're like, it's probably more expensive now, but it's 10,000, at least $10,000 and up.
Are you
Yeah,
kidding me? For a
um,
midwife,
for a midwife.
$10,000?
Yes, I'm not. Yeah,
Whoa.
I've heard people on podcasts about 6,000, 4,000, 3,000, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
what? I'm like, I wish.
that's
No,
crazy.
it's 10,000
$10,000?
and up. Yeah. Mhm.
Whoa, that's nuts.
Yeah. And I didn't have that lying around. And
Yeah.
I think if I would have known if I had really wanted a midwife, like, I think it's way better to save your money instead of having a big wedding or even a small wedding, save that money for a
Mm-hmm.
birth. Or even if you don't want a midwife, I mean, all of that could go towards a fabulous postpartum, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So so yeah, let's see. So I think, I mean, there were like some moments, some things that happened that really kind of solidified for me that I wanted to free birth. So I I spoke with a family member. I think this was before I was pregnant. It was before I was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Was considering buying a free birth course.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this family member and I was like, maybe she's had a home birth. She seems kind of crunchy. So decided to ask her about her birth. And then she told me about she basically had a pretty traumatic birth where they said she had a placental abruption,
Mm-hmm.
and she had like a lot of management because of her age in her pregnancy, and then it ended up in a C-section. It just sounded really scary. And she was like, well, babies want to come the way they want to come. And I'm just like, I don't think they want to come with that. I'm just like, I don't know about that. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't say that to her, but that's what I thought. And I was just really upset by this story because I think I was looking for some type of confirmation or validation for my decision. Um, which I know I don't need that, but it's like, but that's what I wanted. I wanted to know that somebody that I knew like had done it,
Mm-hmm.
some type of hope. And but that wasn't the case. But that story really just kind of solidified for me that I was like, I'm not going to the hospital. And so I went home that night and I bought the course.
Okay.
um yeah,
Mm-hmm.
after hearing that story, I was like, no, 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 this is not what I want.
Mm-hmm.
um so so yeah. So I guess onto my hear about my pregnancy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Was it a wild pregnancy, or did you engage in the medical system with this because it was your first pregnancy, or how did that go about?
So it was, I want to say mostly wild, but I'm like, maybe that's not a thing. So I guess it wasn't a wild pregnancy. I had 4 prenatal appointments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the main reason I had those was so that I could because I was working at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was working for the city of New York. And in order to get like all of the leave benefits that I was entitled to, I needed to provide documentation from medical providers.
Right. Yeah.
So I would have preferred to have a midwife do that, but like I think the only way to do that is just to like hire her straight out, and I wasn't gonna do that. So
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going to these appointments. I think I saw a different person at every single appointment.
And they were
Uh,
OBs in the hospital?
yes.
Okay.
So I had 3 appointments were with OBs. One was a nurse practitioner,
Mm-hmm.
and I hated every single appointment, and I would turn down everything, and they really didn't like that. I actually did get an ultrasound at my first appointment at 15 weeks, which I didn't want. But then being in there, she's like, well, this is how we can check if it's not ectopic, which,
Mm-hmm.
I knew better at that point. I'm like, I'm 15 weeks pregnant. If it's ectopic, I would probably know by now.
Yeah,
But
totally.
it was so easy to like be in there and just, it was a fear that I had. So I was easily manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so she did the ultrasound and then told me that I had the wrong due date. And that was also really annoying because I know my body. Like I was practicing the fertility awareness method.
Okay.
So I knew much better than she did when I got pregnant and when I would probably have the baby
Mm-hmm.
around. So yeah, eventually I did. By my 4th appointment, I got my paperwork and then I stopped going, which felt really amazing
Mm-hmm.
because every time I would go, it would be something else. They would tell me, like the last appointment that I went to, they told me that because I was, refusing ultrasounds, refusing any Doppler, and they were just like, I was refusing the 20-week ultrasound. They were like, okay, well, if you have to know that if you're in labor, when you come in, you're gonna have to get an ultrasound to see if your baby's breech, and then if the baby's breech, you have to have a C-section.
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
what? I'm just like, where? I'm like 20 weeks pregnant. Like, leave me alone.
No
Like, stop.
kidding.
Yeah, they would just. What else did they say? I mean, they just one appointment, she just went down the list of all the risks of all the things I wouldn't know if she went down this long list, and at the end she was like, so you're okay if your baby is born with its intestines on the outside.
Oh my
And
God.
I was just, yeah, I'm just like, you all are insane.
Isn't
Like
that right? Like that is the craziest thing to do that to a woman
a
who's pregnant in an
yeah,
appointment and think that that's okay
yeah,
to terrify somebody like that.
yeah. I mean, the one of the OBs was like really nice and cool until she spoke to her superior, and then she came back in the room
Mm,
with like a whole different set of things to say to me.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
um, so I was happy to just continue going to them and just finish out my pregnancy and wait for
mhm.
my baby to come.
Yeah. So what did that second half, now that you weren't going to these appointments because you had your paperwork, what did that part of your pregnancy look like?
Um, I mean, I feel like I was just me being pregnant
Hmm.
and I was looking for a doula because I feel like at that point I still kind of didn't really fully understand like what it means to free birth because now it's so obvious to me that I would not look for a doula if I'm going to get a free birth. Doulas support births in the system, whether that's a, a, a midwife attended birth or a hospital birth. Doulas generally do not attend free births because then it wouldn't be a free birth.
Mm.
So what I really wanted, which now I feel like there's more language. So like, you know, a radical birth keeper, which um I mean, then there's, you know, debate about whether or not that's a free birth, but whatever. To me,
I
you know,
mean,
I
I
did have
think
a
it's whatever the
yeah,
mother, if she's
yeah,
birthing and she's not connected to the system, but she wants to have a woman there for support. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a free
Well,
birth. It's her
so
choice to birth free. That's how I feel.
yeah, so I mean, the way that I see it is if it's not a medical provider, I consider it a free birth. And
Exactly.
so I did find someone um I found someone through Free Birth Society. I was linked with somebody who lived, you know, in the city,
Mhm.
and I was gonna be the first birth that free birth that she attended.
Okay.
So she had attended lots of births inside the system, and I think she was done. Now she doesn't even attend births in the system anymore,
Hmm.
and she's continued birth work. But yeah, I had a really bad experience trying to look for a doula to attend my free birth. It was like really upsetting to me, but it all makes sense now.
Hmm.
You know, that just wasn't the place to go to. It was kind of like speed dating for a doula. It's like they're just not gonna, they're told that they can't attend those kinds of births, you
Yeah.
know. So if I were to find somebody there, I'd be really lucky.
Hmm.
So I did find someone through like free birth communities, um and that was like probably like a few weeks before I gave birth, I think. It was like right at the end of my pregnancy. But when I would envision my birth, I could see like I knew that there'd be a woman there, but I just didn't know who she was.
Hmm.
Uh, and I had even asked a friend, but my friend was like, "No, no, I cannot do that." She
Hmm.
was too scared to
Right.
do that.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um, yeah, and then I went on to be pregnant for 42 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
That.
which I mean, I part of me was expecting because my mom said that, you know, always told me that I came late, which always really annoyed me. I'm like, I came right on time.
Mm.
Um, so I was like, oh, maybe, you know, thinking maybe that's a possibility for me too to go to 42 weeks. And that was, I mean, I think that's like the beautiful design of pregnancy is feeling so done at the end. Like I would wake up in the morning, and one morning I woke up and I just cried because I was still pregnant. Because
Mm.
I'm just like, when is this gonna happen? It's never gonna happen. I'm so tired of being pregnant, you know. But I really love that about pregnancy, you know, most of the time. Like you know, having the opportunity to experience that like doneness.
Mhm.
um, yeah, because then it's just like birth is a big thing to take on, and it's nice to feel done with the pregnancy and to feel ready to move on when you're about to like embark on
Mhm.
like the next part of the journey, which is huge.
Mhm.
So yeah. So
Can I ask a quick question before we
yes.
move on? How was your husband feeling about your choice to birth outside of the system? Was he for it, or like, I need more information, or not for it?
He had so he didn't really in the beginning he wasn't really for it.
Mm.
And then I had a couple of sessions with someone to talk about um I think I think there was Emily Saldea. I had a couple of sessions with her, and she kind of helped explain things to him,
Mm,
and I guess answer any questions. And I even had one at the end of my pregnancy because I was just like, I'm not sure if the baby's head down, and he was like, well, if the baby's breech, I'm calling 911. And I was just like, my heart drops. Like,
mm,
you can't just do that. Like, you don't know what they'll do. Like, I knew what they could
mm,
do, but he had no idea. Like, he wasn't thinking it through, like what they
mm,
could possibly do to me.
right.
Um, like by just calling 911. And so yeah, so I mean, eventually he was mostly okay, but then there was stuff like that with like the breach,
Mm-hmm.
which I was like, most likely this baby is head down. It's just some fear that I had, that it could be a breech baby, which she was not a breech baby. And then also, I mean, generally the way our relationship was kind of like I was the one who made the decisions,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like happy to let me make the decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we didn't really talk a lot about what life was going to look like. I guess like yeah, in early postpartum. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so we're divorced now, so that
Mm-hmm.
relationship also definitely had its set of issues.
Right.
um yeah, it's like he would like for me to make all of the decisions because it kind of took that pressure off of him, and
Mm.
he that was okay until it wasn't okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
It was
see.
like really not okay, and it's just that was like confusing to me. It's just like, so you want me to be in charge but you don't want me to be in charge.
Mm.
It's like well, you be in charge, and then it would turn around and say that I'm the one who's like being controlling and trying to control the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, all the responsibility is put on me. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that dynamic was happening. um and it got really highlighted in postpartum.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But for the birth, he was like mostly okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Well, do you want to start going into how that your birth journey started? Because you made it to 42 weeks. I think that's amazing. So what was that day
Yeah.
like when you first kind of realized this is it?
Well, I mean, I think her birth, like I love her. Like one word that I would use to describe the birth is romantic.
Mm,
That's what I love. That's what I think. I'm like, it was romantic. Like that morning, like I had some cramping like early in the morning, maybe like 6 a.m. And I woke up and I went to the bathroom and I wiped and I had some bloody show. And then I started to cry because I was just like, oh, like my baby's coming today. Like I know my baby's coming.
mm,
Um, and I was like, I have to rest. They always say you have to rest. And so I tried to go back to sleep. And I think the the contractions went on to like maybe like the late afternoon, no, late morning, like 11 a.m. Like I was still able to move around. I went to go like across the street to go get a bagel,
mm,
and then I came back and the contractions stopped. So I decided to take a nap because I knew that it was possible that labor was going to start again
mm,
um, that night. And it did. So like the cramping started up again. I don't know if it was like maybe 8 or 9, nothing too intense. I decided to watch Dirty Dancing because it's my favorite movie.
Mine too.
Yeah. And then it got to a point where I was like, turn that movie off, like turn it off. Turn
Hmm.
it off. So I think that was probably, let's see. So that was around 11. Because
Mm,
her the whole I say that the labor was about 22 hours,
mm,
and I start that count from when it got so intense that I had to like breathe through the sensations.
mhm.
Let me get this baby. Um, so she's like wiggling back there. So yeah, and then sorry, now I'm remembering other parts of the labor. I yelled at him because he was playing video games on his phone,
Mhm.
and I was like leaning over the couch having a contraction. And he was like, what do you want me to do? Stare at the air? And I was so angry and I just sent him to the bedroom. I said, just go. I was like, you want to go? Just go, please go. Because like if you're
Mm-hmm.
not gonna be here with me and
Mm-hmm.
like holding space for me, and because to me birth is sacred and you're
Mm-hmm.
playing video games, I felt really disrespected.
Yeah.
And so I asked him to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So he went into the bedroom and I labored alone for a few hours, and then at some point um I called the woman who was supporting me, and she came probably around like 3 in the morning. And like we would just chat about birth in between contractions. Like I just sat
Mm-hmm.
on the couch and we would just chat about it. And then just like moving around the apartment at like I think once the sun rose, um I started to like, go in the bedroom, go in the bathtub, and like just kind of cycle around. She did like some rebozo sifting at some point. I asked her to send him into the bathroom while I was taking a bath at some point so we could, make up. Because I'm like, I can't like have this baby while like the last thing that happened was like a weird little stupid fight.
Mm-hmm.
So so yeah, I needed to like forgive him. So I did that. And it was raining that day. That's another reason why I say it was romantic. It was raining and I love the rain.
Mm-hmm.
I had bought some peonies the day before. I had bought some peonies for my birth altar, and they bloomed the whole day, like, which was it was just so sweet because it's like they were closed, and then I felt like they blossomed like as I blossomed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So yeah, let's see. I mean, yeah, I listened to my birth playlist on and off. I'm sorry. Okay, so you finished. So I listened to my birth playlist on and off, and just labored. And I think at some point I had like a little cry. I was just like, why? I was because it felt like nothing was happening. It's like, why is this taking so long? I
Mm-hmm.
think it was like maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I don't even think that that was transition because my water didn't break probably till like maybe 7 o'clock at night. So, but I just cried a little bit and then just kept laboring.
Mm-hmm.
And then I felt like I needed to poop. And I was just like, is this a baby or is this poop? I was like, no, this is definitely poop. I'm gonna go try and poop. It's uncomfortable. So I went to the bathroom to try. And I think I had felt that way for a while, but I was scared. I didn't want to like push on a closed cervix.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't want to like, yeah, jeopardize anything. And so I went and I started to so I started to push, and then I heard a pop and my water is released.
Wow.
Um, so and then I was like so excited because I was like, something's happening, like something
Mm-hmm.
new is happening. And then I was like, soon. And then so my ex, he had been filling up the birth tub the entire day because he tried to fill it up and then it was too cold. So then he had to boil water. And so he was like working on it for many, many, many hours. And it was like right when my water's released, like maybe 20 minutes after that, that it was finally ready and it was perfect. And I got in there and it was so good and I could just like totally relax in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really plan to give birth in the tub, but I did. Um, so yeah, I went in there and I got in there and I at some point I started maybe I don't know, maybe 20 minutes after being in there, I started to feel the urge to push.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was pushing, I was like, this is going to take about an hour and a half to 2 hours. I don't know how I knew these things, but I was just like, I'm feeling like that's how long it's going to take.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's about how long it took, like
Mm-hmm.
an hour and a half to 2 hours of pushing. And um, pushing felt really great. It felt like sexually pleasurable,
Mm-hmm.
which I didn't know could happen, but it also was really welcoming because um I mean after going through contractions but I think it makes sense I'm like it's probably like lots of blood rushing to the area, which I think is probably
Mm-hmm.
really protective for things like tearing.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that it felt like kind of like arousing or whatever.
Yeah.
So that, but I was surprised by that sensation. And I remember like feeling myself opening and thinking like, this isn't that bad. Like this isn't like the Ring of Fire.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then her head needed to come out. And then she started to crown and I was like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the part that was like the most like acutely painful was when the widest part of her head
Mm-hmm.
came out.
Okay.
So and I didn't know like I think I was prepared for like the stretching of my perineum, but I
Right.
didn't know that it would hurt my clitoris.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that from women. They're surprised
Yeah.
by that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like and it was so I was terrified. I also felt her head and I thought maybe there was a prolapse cord. Um
Okay.
so but there so I've heard this story before where you think like especially listening to other birth stories thinking it's a prolapse cord but it's really just like the skin. And
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't say anything to anybody else in the room because I'm like if it's a prolapse cord there's nothing we can do about it now because this
Yeah.
baby's about to come out. So
Yeah.
I just felt a little bit more carefully and I'm like this doesn't feel like a cord. It's probably like I couldn't feel around it.
Yeah.
So I was
Okay.
like I'm like this is just a wrinkly head.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't say any of that because I'm like, they don't need to know any of this is that I'm thinking about any of this because I don't need to cause, unnecessary panic in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So so yeah, her head came out. She didn't even have the cord wrapped around her, I don't think. Um yeah, her head came out and then like it was like 20 seconds later, like the rest of her body emerged.
Mm-hmm.
And from the position my ex he like picked her up from behind me and then I like turned around and like lifted my leg up over her umbilical cord so that I could like sit and like it's funny I didn't even want to look at her like I was scared to look at her.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I did look at her it was like it was love at first sight and I felt like the rush of the hormones and everything. And she's like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my whole life.
Aw.
So yeah, yeah. So then and then they helped me get out of the pool and I sat on the couch with her
Mm.
and we bonded.
Oh, I love that. That's so
Yeah.
beautiful. And did it take a long time for your placenta to come out, or did it come out like right away, or was it a few hours later, or
So the placenta it was probably about an hour later, but it was challenging to get it out.
okay.
Um
How come?
like
In what
it
way?
like I was I realized I was scared to push at that point,
Mm,
even though I'd been pushing all that time, but I was like
yeah.
scared to push it out. It's like I tried the like coughing, the squatting,
Mm-hmm.
and I just felt like it wasn't budging. And I tried to follow the cord up and it felt like I could feel the placenta right there. So then I just wanted to be done. So I ended up like wrapping my hand around the cord and like I pulled really hard. It's also very slippery because of the blood.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
I pulled really hard to get it out. Um and I'm not sure if that caused problems or not later on. Because later on I was diagnosed with retained placenta or retained products of conception. Although my placenta did look complete to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually did end up getting a DNC.
Oh, you did?
Um, yes. It's like
Okay.
that's like a whole other story.
Right. Do you want to
Um,
share it? You can if you want, or if it's for another place, another time, that's totally fair too.
well, so I feel like postpartum is like a whole other big journey. And then I don't know how much time we have because I'm like I have the other birth.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's fine. Like we've got as much time as you want to share. I don't really have a cutoff time limit.
Okay.
I want you to share in a nice way. So
Okay. So yeah, I'm trying to think. So we had a hard time with breastfeeding.
okay.
Um and there was where like by like day 5 it was like her behavior and like her diapers didn't seem right, her poop wasn't transitioning. Um, she would cry all night. Like I'd nurse for hours and hours and hours on end, like 4 to 5 hours straight. And I didn't know like what was normal either, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is my first time. I didn't know that breastfeeding had such a steep learning curve. I was not
Mm-hmm.
prepared for it, although that was what I planned to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that led to us um kind of what's it called? What's the word? Um like dealing with the system like way earlier than what I had wanted to.
Okay.
So I mean, first we saw an IBCLC, but then we saw a family doctor, and which I felt was unnecessary because the IBCLC, you know, was helping me with the feeding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, baby. um, but that family doctor um wanted us to get like, you know, the newborn screening and all of that. And like I mentioned earlier, there were a lot of things that I hadn't really discussed with my partner at the time because he just
Mm-hmm.
kind of made it seem like you make the decisions, I'm fine with them. But
Mm-hmm.
then there were certain decisions I had made that it turned out that he wasn't okay with
Okay,
when
yeah.
they came around, like
Mm.
the testing and all of that. So he was kind of adamant in us getting this testing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can we pause for a second?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna so yeah, postpartum, we had a hard time with breastfeeding. So we went to go see this family doctor, like that's day 5 or day 6 postpartum. At that point, I was already supplementing with formula, which I was like devastated.
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, and like she wasn't transferring milk well. Um, so we went to this family doctor. It was not a very good experience.
Mm.
And like she didn't understand why I gave birth at home. Um, and I didn't really do a good job of like setting it up so that things would be easy because I didn't really know. It's like hard navigating, like
Mm-hmm.
trying to navigate the system and also have a free birth.
Totally. Yeah, it really is.
So she wasn't really very helpful, but she was, you know, adamant that we needed to get these, you know how they word things like you have to get this test,
Mm.
which I know is really just a strong suggestion. It's like not the law, but he didn't see it that way. And so I tried to accommodate him with these things that he felt were important for our daughter um and really, you know, like abandon myself in the process.
Mm.
And so um so I think a few days after that appointment we were trying to get these tests done. We were getting the runaround, so I decided let's go to the hospital where I would have given birth if I would have gone to the hospital.
Mm.
And that was like a whole big weird thing. She was diagnosed with as being dehydrated, even though she was being supplemented at that point. I don't think we were feeding her frequently enough
Mm.
um, to like catch up with what she had lost
Okay.
in the time that we were having a hard time, even though I was like nursing her like all the time.
Mm.
Um, and they just kind of wore me down and they were like, you should get, you know, checked out and you look pale. And I'm just like, well, duh, like I haven't eaten or drank anything and I should be in bed with my
Mm.
baby. Like I'm 8 days postpartum. So but eventually I'm just like, you know, I mean, lack of sleep. I decided I thought it was a good decision to let them do tests, which included ultrasound, and then they found that like I had a lot of stuff in my uterus. So, but I didn't have any symptoms for retained placenta. Like I didn't have a fever. I didn't have any severe abdominal pain.
Mm.
The only um, like sensations that I would feel, and I think might have stopped at that point, were like when I would nurse and then I'd get cramping. But I don't even think I was experiencing that anymore.
Okay. And
And
that's normal to feel because it's the oxytocin just
yeah,
bringing
yeah, that's
things
normal.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's good. But other than that, I wasn't feeling like there was no like weird pain,
Mm-hmm.
no fever, no no bleeding that seemed really, it just looked like lochia, like what I would expect lochia to be like.
Yeah.
And so she was hospitalized for about 24 hours, and they put an IV in her for a few hours.
Oh.
Yeah, it was I wasn't in the room for that, but that was, I know that was traumatizing for my partner. And it
Hmm.
was hard for me to leave the room when she was, I felt like I should be with my baby, but also knew I couldn't handle that. So they wheeled me away to do a test on me while they did that to her.
Mm.
Um, I mean, it was so bad that a woman who was in another room apparently like cried about it.
Oh
Like,
gosh.
yeah, that she could hear my baby crying and screaming. So, because they weren't very good at it. You know, she's a newborn baby trying to find a
Hmm.
baby.
Hmm.
So, yeah, they tried to get me to stay that night. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and they were telling me that I needed to either get a DNC or take some medication. I don't know if it was like misoprostol or cytotec or something. It's like something to help expel the contents of my uterus, but
Hmm.
that I would have to be monitored. And I was like, well, and at that point I was separated from my baby. They sent her to another hospital.
Oh God.
Yeah, and I told them to send her ahead of me because everything was taking forever. Like
Mm.
I was there from like 12 in the afternoon to 3 o'clock in the morning.
Whoa.
And so I just told them to just send her, and I would just like meet up with her when I got discharged. And so that was hard, but they were trying to tell me to get this procedure done. And I was like, I'm fine right now. I'm not getting this procedure. I was like, I need to think about it. I need sleep. I'm leaving. I'm
Mm.
gonna go be with my baby. They didn't like that, but I made an appointment for the following week to follow up with them,
Hmm.
to do the procedure or whatever. And then I finally left. Um, so, and I did have it was a difficult decision to make. I did decide to have the procedure because I thought that it would like cure the anxiety that I was feeling, which it didn't really. But it did look like there were some pieces of placenta, like they showed me what they found inside.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked like meaty, like placenta, not just blood clots.
Hmm.
I don't know. My body was like expelling though. Like my uterus didn't look. They did an ultrasound right before they did the procedure, and they were even willing to send me home and to have me come back and see if everything was gone. But I was tired of all of the excess doctor appointments in
Yeah.
my immediate postpartum that I was like, just do the procedure so I can be done.
Hmm.
So yeah, postpartum was really, really traumatic.
Yeah.
Which like I had this glorious, amazing, beautiful free birth, and I'm so happy I can appreciate it now because I've done a lot of work to heal.
Hmm.
But like in the immediate aftermath, like it felt like my free birth didn't even matter
Hmm.
for a while. But
Hmm.
now, I mean, I don't feel that way. Just from the way I told the story, I love my birth story. It was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. It's just when you're in that present moment and everything is
Yeah,
so over encompassing and it's hard to see outside of all of that.
yeah. So, but I learned a lot of lessons. We stopped breastfeeding at around 6 weeks. Because I just couldn't figure out like how to make breastfeeding. It was painful. I didn't know how to make it not hurt.
Mm.
I didn't know if I would ever have a full supply. She was mostly formula fed,
Mm.
and I didn't really have a lot of support around me. I didn't know who to trust,
Right.
like to ask for help. So I decided to stop.
Mm.
So that was my first birth.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's such a journey because it was like you were saying, it was so beautiful, that whole birth experience and even pleasurable, which a lot of women don't even feel that, although it is possible to have a truly pleasurable birth experience to then be, flipped on the opposite side of the coin to something so, like you said, traumatic and just
Yeah,
doctor's appointments after doctor's appointments, people trying to get you to do this and that. And, yeah, that's just, wow, what a wild ride.
yeah. It's so important to properly prepare for postpartum.
Hmm.
I like to be on the same page with like your support team or whoever's going to be around you. And
Yeah.
I think being educated, not everybody feels this way, but I learned from experience that breastfeeding doesn't just work out just because you had a free birth.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm of the opinion that it's really important to get knowledgeable about breastfeeding and
Yeah.
to have like and to know who you would lean on for support in case you needed it.
Mm-hmm.
So like
That's great advice.
way ahead of time because there's so many people that can give support, but they give a lot of bad information. I went to people for support and I got a lot of bad information
Okay. Yeah.
who are just not compassionate and care.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, it is really true. You do need to plan for that postpartum time because
yeah,
the pregnancy and birth are only short snippets of
mhm,
that whole journey that you're going on. But postpartum lasts forever. And especially in those
yeah,
early days,
mhm,
establishing and getting everything that you need so that it's all in well working order is important, like you said. So,
yeah,
yeah, that's great advice.
yeah.
Wow.
So
Well, thank you
that
for
was
sharing all that.
you're welcome. Yeah, that's the first birth.
Mhm.
I can't believe I've done this twice. I'm just like, because each one is like this big journey. So then, like, I knew that I wanted another child.
Mhm.
It's funny because I think as I was pushing her out, I was just like, I don't know that I'll ever do this again. But then when I fell in love with her, I saw her face. I'm just like, it was like the next day, I was like, I think I want another baby. I thought I was just gonna have only one. And after having her, I was like, I think I want another one.
Mhm.
And so yeah, and that was something that me and my partner at the time had come away with very different things that we learned from the situation.
Mhm.
And that was like a big thing was that I knew I wanted another baby and I knew that I wanted to free birth and he was like sure that's fine but we can you can free birth but we'll go to the hospital right after. And to me I'm just like but that's the scene of the crime. Like that's where everything turned upside down and to him it's
Mhm.
like this all happened because we didn't go to the hospital. Like I think he thinks
Wow.
that like we wouldn't have the breastfeeding problems or whatever like
Mhm.
and he's he's not in this world the way that I am and I'm just like that's absolutely and plus it's my body,
Yeah. Mm.
and so it's like I'm not gonna do that and so that like really upset him.
Mm, okay.
And so yeah like a day before my daughter turned 1 he ended the relationship thankfully because I don't think I was like I'm gonna stick through it, I'm not walking away again, I don't want to be a single mother and thankfully he ended the relationship for me
Mm,
because it was what needed to happen.
right.
We really just were not aligned in so many ways.
Mhm.
So so yeah, I mean, so I knew I wanted another baby, but I actually knew that I didn't want to date at all. I was like, I have no desire to date for like the first time in my life. I just don't want it. Like it's too much effort. I'm taking care of this baby
Mhm.
but I want another baby. And so I started looking into sperm donation.
Okay.
Yeah. And I wanted to try and do that in like the most sovereign way possible and like a way that was more aligned with my values. Like I didn't like the idea of using a sperm bank.
Mhm.
So I actually used what's it called? The Facebook groups. There are Facebook groups where you can
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah, where people are just like volunteering. There are some men who have lots of children out there.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's not really a lot of legal protection, but people do it anyway.
Mhm.
I'm like, and for me, I'm just like, I mean, I free birth my baby. I'm like, with everything, there's risk, right?
Yeah, totally.
So I think so in New Jersey, the law is like in order to be protected, you like the insemination has to happen in a doctor's office. And I'm like, absolutely no way. Like
Wow.
I don't, I'm just like, I don't birth in the hospital. I'm not gonna conceive in the
Yeah.
hospital. Like, that's not gonna happen.
Mm.
Um, so I found someone and we actually tried 4 times. We used artificial insemination, so at home artificial insemination where I'd use like a soft disc, a
Mhm.
disposable soft disc, and like put the sperm in there, or use like a syringe.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Um, like he'd give me the cup or whatever. And so I did that. Um, and this was like in times of COVID. It was weird.
Okay.
He would come to the Airbnb wearing a mask, and I'm just like, I'm gonna put your bodily fluids into
Yeah.
my vagina, and you're wearing a mask right now.
Oh gosh.
Like, all right, sir. I think I'm the one taking on the most risk right now.
Hmm.
You know, and there's like a lot to like the interview process. You know, I didn't want somebody who had gotten, you know, the
Hmm.
jab, um and I wanted, you know, like STD, like current STD results and all of that. So we tried 4 times and it didn't work. And my cycle got really weird. It started to get shorter and shorter. I didn't know what was going on. It was hard to because I
Hmm.
got pregnant the first time with my daughter and I was just didn't understand what was happening this time. And then the fourth and final time that I tried with him, the night before, a close friend that I have was like I considered asking him, but I was like, I'm not gonna ask him. That's a big ask. I'm not asking him. And so he just volunteered himself. He was like, hey, I know you're doing this and you've been doing this, and if you want, like I'd be willing to help you. And
Mm.
I was like, wow, that's amazing. I was like, well, I'm trying again tomorrow and hopefully it works out, but if it doesn't, like we'll talk. And
Mm.
so it didn't work out. And
Wow.
then yeah, and then we talked about it and he got like his tests and all of that and and like the other guy I was kind of sometimes I was like, did he get the vaccine? Like I was like a little just because of his behavior, he seemed so fearful and
Okay.
he wasn't like anti-government, like he wasn't anti-government enough for me.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
like my friend was just always like, did you believe here this thing? Like
Mm.
he's always telling me like the new thing that's like really like grinding his gears. And
Hmm.
when it comes to COVID. And so I was just like, all right, like I know you're not lying to me. And so yeah, it was so about like 2 months after my attempts with that other guy, I tried with my friend and I got pregnant right away.
Wow. Okay. And then
So
it was, yeah, that's where
yeah,
baby was
I
meant
f-
to come from.
yeah, and it makes me think about like how the egg chooses the sperm.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, yeah, I was like, my eggs are just like, no, 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 we don't want that
Yeah, they're not
guy.
having any
Yeah,
of it. No, thank
no,
you,
we do
sir.
not. Because and he had helped a lot of women get pregnant, but I guess it just wasn't really the match, which kind of blows my mind how
Mm-hmm.
that happens. But yeah,
And
I got pregnant this time.
I think it's so beautiful because it's like people don't realize that the body is so intelligent, and that the body knows what it wants and what it doesn't want, and it will show it through physical symptoms or through ways of like for you, 4 times of doing this at home insemination and it not working. And then the very
Yeah,
first time you switch the person, switch the sperm, and then boom, there you go. Like I feel
yeah,
like that's just the body being so intelligent and so wise and being like, okay, this isn't right, we're rejecting it. This isn't right, we're rejecting it. It
yeah,
keeps doing it until the right thing comes along. It's like, oh, perfect, this will be
yeah.
easy.
And we only tried once.
Yeah.
Like with the other guy, we tried. Like I would get an Airbnb and he would come over, excuse me, and then donate a couple of times. Because
Mm,
I'm like, I gotta get the most bang for my buck. I'm coming all the way out here, getting the
yeah.
Airbnb, and
Mm,
um, oh, excuse me. Yeah, but my friend, it was just that one time and it
mm,
worked,
mm,
which is kind of crazy because it's not like we're a couple where it's like we're making love every other day or every day.
mm,
I'm really just like kind of relying on like hopefully I'm reading my body right. And
yeah.
so yeah. So that happened. And
Mm,
then yeah, and then I was pregnant and I didn't get any prenatal care for this pregnancy.
mm,
Until the very well, I don't know if I'd call that prenatal care. That was like a complication.
mm,
But I hired someone, her name's Lisa Masters. I hired her to basically walk with me
mm,
through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum.
mm,
She lives in Australia, so that was all like, virtual.
mm,
Uh, and so because what I had seen, especially from women that she worked with who had already had their first child, it's like women would I would just see it over and over again. I'm sure it's not like 100% of the time, but it happens it would happen so often that like the women would just work through all of their fears throughout their entire pregnancy and just kind of work all that stuff out. And then they'd have these like quick and efficient, beautiful, normal, boring births, you
Yeah.
know? And I was like, that's amazing, you know? And like that's what I got, which still feels kind of insane.
Mhm.
But yeah. Yeah, I had my wild pregnancy, which was like beautiful. To like not have to go to any appointments. I went to an appointment at Planned Parenthood to get a just so I could have a piece of paper that said I was pregnant because
Oh
you
yeah.
know for birth certificate purposes later on.
Hmm.
Um, and other than that, I didn't have any medical care until 30 it was 39 weeks and 5 days.
Hmm.
I don't know, is there anything you want me to share about my pregnancy?
Yeah, go into like how did
I
that
mean,
work for you if you were working with this woman, Lisa, in Australia? Like
yeah,
what did you talk about, or did you do anything specifically for yourself, like going to chiropractic appointments or cranio, or was
oh,
it just kind of like you just lived out your day and if you felt like
forgot
you
it.
wanted something, you'd do it?
Yeah, but I forgot about that. I did get chiropractic care throughout my pregnancy, which was different from the first time, and
Mm-hmm.
felt really nice because I really love my chiropractor. She's so wonderful, and so it was so nice to like go there and connect with her. And like I remember my first appointment. I didn't put down any like my doctor or anything because I didn't have one. And I was a little nervous about that. And she was like, "Oh, you're gonna free birth?" And I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "Who did I meet?" And like she was so excited for me.
Hmm.
I was so excited that just the fact that she knew what that was. And
Hmm.
so I was like, she's perfect. And yeah, so I got care from her. I got like a massage like towards the end. It would have been nice to get more massages. And I mean, I don't know. With with Lisa, we just would box her all the time, and
Hmm.
I mean, any little thing that would come up, for example, I experienced some bleeding in the maybe around 10 weeks. Um, it wasn't even a lot. It was like I wiped and there was blood, and I was like, I had a lot of anxiety. I was like constantly thinking like, what if I miscarry? Which that didn't happen. But I thought that that was when I saw the blood, I was like, it could be like this could be it. I was like, or it could be nothing. I just have to go to sleep. But I
Hmm.
was crying about it. And so like little things like that, it was nice to have her support because if
Hmm.
I didn't have her, like I would just be alone kind of going through like
Hmm.
all the little things of pregnancy and um yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about breastfeeding and
Hmm.
I had done a lot of work and I've educated myself like a lot um, in the years between my children. So like being confident about the fact that like I know my shit and I know what to do,
Hmm.
even if there's problems. So what else did I do? I mean, just trying to be around women. Like I went to a village prenatal early in my pregnancy, which was really nice.
Hmm.
I had a mother blessing at the end of my pregnancy instead of a baby shower.
Hmm.
So um my baby daddy would like take me out like regularly. He'd just he'd just drive over and like take me out for the day and that was really nice. Um yeah, like having that relationship and him like checking in on me, like having that kind of care. And I also knew with him I didn't have to worry about him having a problem with any of my decisions and then like trying to fight for custody or anything weird. I mean, I didn't think I would have that problem because he's been my friend for like 10 years. He knows who I am. He was with me. Like he was my friend when I had my first daughter.
Hmm.
So, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's pretty much it for my pregnancy.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great.
Um I mean, I did have some like panic come up. I mean, I don't know if I want to talk a lot about that, but panic is like I think I have a my dysregulated nervous system
Mm.
and it started in pregnancy. I mean, it probably started before that, but like it got really like it got really bad in pregnancy. And I would notice it was like when I wasn't taking care of myself, like when I felt like I had low blood sugar or something, then I
Mm.
would start to feel like, is something wrong?
Okay.
Um, is something wrong? Am I dying? That's
Mm.
basically where my thoughts would go. And that was just like an indicator that I needed to make sure that I took care of myself so I
Mhm.
didn't feel, unsafe in my body. So yeah,
Mm.
I mean, that's basically how pregnancy went.
Yeah, and that's super normal. Like you said
Yeah.
in your first one, you were just a woman who was pregnant, and that in this
Mhm.
second pregnancy sounds the exact same. You did things for
Yeah.
your body when you wanted to, like the chiropractic appointments,
Yeah.
and you were
Yeah.
just living life, and you just happened to be pregnant at the
Yeah.
time you were living your life.
Yeah. I mean, I had really bad round ligament pain.
Okay.
Like I would get attacks in the middle of the night, and I'm just like,
Mhm.
I guess this is just my pregnant body. I just get
Mhm.
really bad like round ligament pain that does not. I don't. Did I get it in labor? I think I even got it after. No, I got it postpartum. I even felt
Oh,
some round ligament pain. It was just, yeah. So
wow.
that was probably the thing that bothered me the most physically.
Yeah.
But um, so everything seemed to be like pretty great. Like I was making sure I was eating really well. Another thing that like Lisa kind of offered was like so part of like the package that I bought for her was like also her like collective of women who did different things, and I would get support from them, like like a meditation session or like a
Mhm.
setting up my birth altar session or a nutrition session with different women.
Mm.
And so that was really supportive of my pregnancy. So yeah, and all of that was really wonderful. And then it was 39 weeks and 5 days, and um so I'm hoping to give birth, anytime.
Mm.
And I wake up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom like I do a million times a night. And um and I finish peeing, and then I like barely shift my body to get some toilet tissue, and a stream of liquid starts to come out of my body, and it feels like I'm like, am I peeing again? I'm
Mm.
like, this is weird. So I try to stop it, but as soon as I like let go, like with the Kegel, it just continues to pour. And I was like, this is weird. It doesn't really feel like pee. And I'm like, I shouldn't have that much. Like, it would make sense if it was like a little trickle, because sometimes things get weird with your bladder with,
Mm.
not having a lot of space. But it was like a good stream. And
Mm.
so I wiped, thinking that maybe my water had broken, but it wasn't. It was bright red blood. And so that was so scary.
Mm.
Um, So I think I had some towels, like, because I was hoping to give birth soon. So like I just felt like I should like sit down on top of the towels. I felt like sitting on the toilet and just letting it pour out of me. I was like, that can't be good. I was like, let me just sit on a pile of towels. And um I think I had like some adult diapers that I grabbed at some point. And then I called Lisa, and then I called my mom,
Mm.
and I was like, I might have called my mom first. And I was like, we have to go. I was just like, I need help. I said, and I think we have to go to the hospital.
Mm.
um, yeah, that was not something that I would have ever thought was going to happen. Of all the anxiety that I had,
Mhm.
like bleeding at the end of my pregnancy was not. Excuse me. It's interesting that that's happening now. So, yeah, I remember looking at my daughter in her bed, in our bed, and just because I bed share, and I'm just like scared, like, what if I don't make it back to her? Like, I just felt horrible leaving her in the middle of the night,
Mhm.
when she's used to having me sleep next to her. I think my dad stayed with her,
Okay.
and my mom drove me to the hospital. Um, and I kind of, so like having Lisa's support was really helpful, because she was like, what is it that you want from them, like to get clear on what information I'm trying to get from them.
Yeah.
And like I wanted to know if the baby was okay. I wanted to know why I was bleeding,
Mhm.
because I shouldn't be bleeding like that. That's just not normal.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't, it was all blood. And so So yeah, I mean, I got to the hospital. I think it stopped. It probably started to stop in the car because I remember sitting down in the car and feeling like a huge blood clot came out.
Okay.
So I think my body was already trying to stop the bleed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so probably by the time I was in the hospital, it might have stopped. Um, and they did so I let them do testing. Unfortunately, they drug tested me, which I didn't know till afterwards when I was looking at my test results.
Really?
Yeah, they drug tested me, which doesn't surprise me, but it's just also really disgusting that they did
Yeah.
that. Like
Oh,
they probably did
totally.
that. They did that because, I didn't get any medical care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and probably thinking who knows what about me.
Yeah.
And thank God I've been clean for almost 15 years. So like, and thank God, because like if that wasn't my story, I could see why I might like smoke weed once in a while, and like that could have really messed things up, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is fine. I think that that's normal to want to do that in pregnancy, especially if you're experiencing nausea. But I'm just like that could have like so easily have gone badly.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, they so eventually like I let them do tests. I got all the, ultrasound. It was just I did all the things that I was just that I avoided my entire pregnancy.
Mm.
They did a pelvic exam, like I let them do that. Um, Even though I mean, I'm just like I'm like to me it's all like some form of rape. Like and
Mhm.
I
Oh,
I
yeah.
did all I consented to all of these things, like knowing my opinions about like to me I'm like cervical checks are rape. Like that's kind of how I see it. It's disgusting. It's assault.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, okay, this is what I know what this is. I know my opinion about it, and I'm allowing this for whatever reason, either because I think it could be meaningful or because I'm trying to I think I'm just trying to like play nice.
Mhm.
Like I don't want anybody to hurt me or my baby.
Right.
I think there's part of that was going into some decisions I would make. I gotta get my baby.
No worries.
All right. So if long story short, they said I had a circumvallate placenta.
Mm.
I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I
I had
have,
never
but do
heard
you
of
want
that.
to explain it for if there's listeners that don't know what it is?
Um, I had never heard the term before it happened to me, if that's what it is. I still have my placenta. I'm still not like completely sure if
Mm.
it's definitely circumvallate, but it's it's when the like basically like the placenta is not like properly attached to the uterine wall and it's curved up around the edges. And so there could be risk for things like placental abruption. Um, and if you have something like that, I'm not sure if there are risks for the baby, but I also found out I had a single, um, that she had a single umbilical artery,
Oh, yeah,
um,
yeah,
in her cord.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so they scared me with all the what ifs that can mean, like
Mm-hmm.
defects, which she doesn't have. Which makes me think it's really just a variation of normal.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and
totally.
so yeah, so their best guess, because they still can't tell me definitively, and I knew that too, that everything's so big in there, it's really hard to see. Ultrasound is not 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And so she wants to tell you the story. So yeah, I was still terrified at that point, and I didn't feel safe going home. So oh my goodness, it's she wants to scream now. Um, so yeah, I didn't feel comfortable going home. And they made it sound like it was possible. They still believed it was possible for me to have a vaginal birth.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, great. But of course, I can't just sit and wait to give birth. They're just like, so you can have an induction. It's like induction or C-section,
Mm-hmm.
which also didn't really make sense to me because I'm like, wouldn't an induction increase my risk of having a placental abruption? Like,
Exactly.
it didn't make sense to me, but but at that point I was so scared and I was thinking maybe it'll be successful, maybe it'll barely be an induction, maybe I'll be lucky,
Mm.
which apparently I'm not the first woman who's ever thought that. And so so 10 hours into the induction, I there was still no baby, and my contractions were really, I felt really manageable, and I was like, if I allow this to continue, um it's going to go really badly for me.
Mm-hmm.
um and and Lisa was just like, she said something to me at some point. She was like, this isn't your story.
Mm.
But then she continued to support me while I was there and the decisions I was making.
Mm.
And then that was something she had said like earlier in the night. And then like later on, it was like 10 hours into the induction, she was like, you can leave. She was like,
Mm.
you don't have to stay.
Mm.
Like, I know it feels that way, but you do not have to stay. And I'm like, can I? Like, can I seriously leave? Like after I've done all this, you know? And so that's what I decided. And I was like, the doctor's not gonna like it. She didn't like it. I had to sign a waiver saying that me or my baby could die.
Yeah. Oh, the
Uh,
AMA thing
yeah,
against the
but it
medical.
like literally was just like you or your baby could die.
Mm-hmm.
Maternal or fetal death. And I knew that, like I knew like that's the risk of, but I had stopped bleeding by
Mm-hmm.
that point. The baby was handling the contractions well, which I knew that if I kept going it could get to a point where she wasn't. But I'm like, obviously the baby's not in distress. It's been 10 hours since the bleed
Right.
and things
And
happen.
sorry, what kind of
Yeah.
induction was it with Pitocin or the Cytotec, fully bulb? Like how did they administer
So
that for you?
they used a Cook balloon, which
Oh,
has,
balloon, yeah.
it has the balloon on both sides.
Okay.
And then after that was Pitocin.
Okay.
And sorry, it's just the whole thing is pretty sadistic, honestly. Because all I've known is natural birth. And so like the bleeding that I saw after like the Cook balloon fell out, I was like, is that normal? And they're like, oh yeah, that's fine, that's great, everything looks good. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is what women experience like regularly. And then with the Pitocin, like my arm swole up with the IV. It was like so swollen, and then hearing that clicking sound of the
Yeah.
Pitocin, it was just like, I was like, this is not. And then like not like, I'm not allowed to eat, I can't sleep. They're always fiddling with the monitors on my belly, like even though it's wireless it keeps moving, so they have to keep coming in and like breathing over me and like moving it to
Mm,
the right position. And like, it felt like my belly wasn't even mine anymore, like if it
right.
wasn't even attached to my body. It was so weird. And
Wow.
so like, because it had that weird like bandage around it to keep the
Mm-hmm.
monitor in place.
Mm,
And so yeah, at that point I was like, I have to go home.
yeah.
So I did, and that felt really awesome.
Mm-hmm. I bet.
But yeah, I mean, so it felt really awesome. But then like as I was waiting for spontaneous labor to happen,
Mm.
I had, it was really, really hard. It was really hard. Like I had so much fear and I was crying a lot. And because I was just like, what if it continues? Because I was like, it's possible that I just had a partial placental abruption and the rest of my placenta is like securely attached to my uterine wall. Like, why would my body fail me now?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's really likely. That seems likely to me. Um, but also, what if I die? What if I bleed out, I die and she dies? And like my worst nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was just like, I don't want to go. I was like, and I actually decided that I didn't have to make the decision like before labor started, that I could make the decision when labor started what I wanted
Right.
to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So um okay, okay baby, here, let's give you your toy back. No, please don't do that. Here. He's like, no, this fire is way more interesting. So then so yeah, so then it was 41 weeks and 3 days. Um I'm like looking stuff up on the internet about
Mm.
circumvallate placenta that I should not be doing. Like I remember that's like I was watching TV. I was like, I should go to sleep. I don't know when I'm gonna have this baby. And then I turned the TV off. And then I'm like reading stuff on the internet I shouldn't be reading.
Mm.
That's like scaring me.
Mm.
And then I hear a little, like I feel like a little pop, and then liquid starts coming out, and I'm just like, what is that? I was like, so I was like, it's probably, I was like, I think my water just broke. So
Mhm.
of course, I'm still scared it's gonna be blood, and I wipe and it's clear, and so it's my water. And I felt like a rush of adrenaline, and I'm like running around, like it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm running around my living space trying to get stuff ready. And I'm like, okay, I need to relax. Like, I don't have any contractions right now. I'm okay. Like, I
Mhm.
can set things up, and then I should lay down and go to bed.
Mhm.
And so I let Lisa know that my water broke. And, we talked about how it could be nothing and it could be open for days.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay. And I was like, I should try to get some sleep. So I probably laid down for like an hour, and I think I did fall asleep. But then the contractions started around 3 o'clock in the morning, and they were very intense. So she was born, she was born around 8:30 in the morning.
Oh.
Yeah, um, so my labor, so there was actually, so my water when I started to have contraction was pink.
Mm.
And so that was really challenging for me to see, because I'm just like, is this normal? Like, because
Mm.
it didn't, because most of my waters weren't open for my last labor. And so I'm just like, why are my waters pink? There's blood in my waters. And she's like, and she would constantly like coaching me, like, do I want to go to the hospital? Like, what do I think it could be? And I'm just like,
Mhm.
I think that my, that I'm probably, that's, it's like my cervix is opening and there's probably blood from that. That's probably what it is. But it was still really hard to see every time. And like I would go to the bathroom or whatever. But um okay, baby. Are you excited? I think she's excited. So yeah, I just went on and labored. And I kept her on the phone towards the end. I just didn't want to be alone, which is interesting. Like I was physically alone, but I still didn't want to be alone. So she was just there,
Mhm.
quiet while I labored. And I remember at some point she was like, "Do you feel pushy?" And I'm just like, "I don't know." I was like, "I don't
Mhm.
think so," because I felt it. Like I think I did feel it, and like I was about to be like that. It was like starting to do that transition, but I didn't want to
Yeah.
get my hopes up.
Mhm.
And then I was like, I really need to pee. I think I'm gonna go pee. So I go to pee, and then a contraction comes, and a big, a big pushing sound. And I was like, oh, here it is. I was like, this baby's coming now, and I couldn't pee. Um, and I was like, I don't want to have the baby on the toilet. It was like a camping toilet because I live in my parents' basement. There's no bathroom, so I had a camping toilet down here
Oh
for
yeah.
the nights, since I pee like 7 times a night when I'm pregnant.
Mhm.
So yeah, I tried. So yeah, eventually I got to the bed, and I laid down on the bed, and I was pretty sure I wanted to push her out while like in some type of lying down position, because I was scared of my clitoris getting hurt again,
Right.
which it did. But like last time I felt pain for like 3 months after the birth, and I didn't tear, but it was still like sore.
Mhm.
And that didn't happen this time. But even though I did feel pain in that area when I was pushing her out. Um, okay. She's telling the story too.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of at some point, it probably was when I was in transition. I was like, why do women do this over and over again? They're insane. And um, what was I gonna say? You're distracting me, my love. Oh, and I felt like I understood why women get epidurals, and I didn't feel that in my first birth. But yeah, I was lying down in my bed. I had put a bunch of towels down, and I just let the waves take over, and pushed her out, and at some point her body was like half out of me and she was crying and I couldn't pick her. I like couldn't reach her, so I had to lift my butt up and kind of do like a, what is that move? Forget what it's called. But anyway, I was like lying on my back and I had to lift my butt up so that her body could fall out. And then I like scooped her up from behind me. And I mean, she was, I was worried about like us bleeding out and like the placenta separating, like all of that stuff. And she was born, she was crying and she wasn't even fully outside of my body. So she was
Wow.
strong. She was a strong
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah,
She was a
totally.
strong, thriving baby. And
Mhm.
yeah, so and then the placenta came really easily, like 20 minutes later. The contractions wouldn't stop until the placenta came out. Um, so I got like exactly the birth that I had wanted, which was a straightforward, efficient birth, with the placenta coming like right after. Okay, baby.
And this placenta, it came out fully formed as well. There was nothing missing, no pieces that you
No,
noticed or felt after inside still.
nothing that I could tell. I did have a lot of, I think, probably PTSD of thinking like, what if I had retained placenta? But I
Right.
didn't have it. But I didn't. In actuality, I had no problems.
Mm-hmm.
And probably by like 3 weeks, like my lochia probably almost like completely stopped. It's
Hmm.
like it transitioned the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
Which I guess there's a range of normal for that too.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, but like I got a blood clot probably like a couple weeks. It was like a blood clot, but apparently that's normal too. And like it got less and less over time. And I did
Mm-hmm.
some steaming, and so
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Oh,
everything was much easier with the placenta this time.
yeah, yeah, totally. And then do you want to speak to your breastfeeding journey? Because you said after this first birth, you did a whole bunch of work and stuff like that to educate yourself. And I can see you breastfeeding your daughter here and now. So do you want to compare those two?
Yeah. So it was we had a lot of the same issues that I had with my first, but the
Okay.
biggest difference was that this time I had support and like
Mm-hmm.
knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like watching her diapers like a hawk. I did end up supplementing her with donor milk at day 5. And but I was prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
And like I even used, and we were able to be like exclusively breastfed from me um by around like 3 or 4 months postpartum. So it took a
Okay.
while.
Yeah.
but but we got there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to like she's never had a bottle, which I'm really, really proud of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I fed her at the breast for all feedings using a supplemental nursing system. And she did have some formula for like a week, maybe 2. But then as soon as I found donor milk, I used that.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually do take medication to help with my supply. Like that
Okay.
helped me get to where I needed to be
Mm-hmm.
to feed her exclusively for me, because at some point she started pulling out the SNS. I felt like she believed in me. I felt like that's what she was saying. It's like, you don't need this.
Yeah.
And then so yeah, and now we're just exclusively breastfeeding and it's wonderful. And
Mm.
she actually did get her tongue tie. We got a tongue and lip tie release. But
Okay. Okay.
yeah, and she got body work. I mean, we did all of the things. Yeah, we did a lot of things to get to where we are,
Mm-hmm.
but it definitely paid off.
Right.
So
Right.
we're
Okay.
living the dream now.
Yeah. Oh, I
So
love that. And
yeah.
with your first babe, did you ever get her checked to see if she had a tongue tie or a lip tie as well? Or no?
No, I haven't. I'm still suspicious that she has that, but I haven't
Mm.
because I'm not
Okay.
sure that I'm not sure about addressing it like
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Yeah.
Like I think as time goes on, I'll see, because
Mm-hmm.
it's different when they're bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, I love that story. And I want to just make note to the fact that you said you went to the hospital for that bleeding at 30, I think you said 39 and 5.
39.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for the hospital, and then you left under AMA, under your own choice and your own decision. And then it was almost a week later until your daughter was born. And it just gets me thinking of how all of these women that go in for inductions, it doesn't work out. And then they all end up most of the time getting an unnecessary cesarean, where if the
Mhm.
hospital just like put a time limit for inductions, if baby doesn't come in the 10 hours vaginally, go home,
Right.
sort yourself out, relax, chill out for a couple of days and just wait for the birth to start spontaneously. Like, how many women would have such different birth experiences that weren't filled with trauma, that weren't filled with the unnecessarily traumatic cutting of their babies from their bodies, if they had that choice to just say, okay, it's
Yeah.
not working now, go home, rest, relax, eat some good food, take a good nap, have, get your feet massaged or something like that, and just
Yeah.
chill out and wait an extra week and let's see if baby comes. I think
Yeah.
that's like how different birth would be if that was possible. How many babies wouldn't be evicted from the womb, a
Right.
week or maybe even 2 weeks before they were actually meant to come out, if that hospital protocol was so different, and it was, the option was there to actually have you just go home if you wanted to, instead of you having to sign an AMA and making it like say your baby will die or you will die if you leave the hospital. And it's just,
Yeah.
it's
They'd
so
much rather
crazy.
they
Yeah.
can charge you for that.
Yeah, exactly.
But
And
they
it,
much rather keep you there for a days long induction
of
than say,
course.
hey, this isn't working out. Let's just reset.
Exactly. Yeah. Cause like you said, they get the money for that. They get the money for the cesarean, and but it's just like so amazing to point out that like inductions are not a way to get a baby out of your body. It's a way to go for an
Yeah.
unnecessary major abdominal surgery. Yeah, but inductions aren't, like, there's no proof that inductions are safer than just vaginal birth. And
Right.
yeah, like for you, it
And
was a
it's
week
and it's
later.
possible. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
possible for women. Well, first, it's possible for them to say no. You can
Hmm.
always say no to induction, and
Mm.
you can leave an induction. Even though it doesn't feel
Exactly.
like you can, you definitely can.
Exactly. And maybe your baby will have an extra week or 2 weeks in the womb where they're meant to be. So yeah,
Yeah.
I love that part of your story, that yeah, that's what happened. You took your power, you left, and then you were able to have this beautiful birth experience with your daughter at home, and
Yeah.
did it the way that you wanted it to be. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's really amazing. And it's a beautiful story that I'm so grateful that I'm able to have on this podcast and in this movement to be shared, so that other women can hear this and now be like, oh, cool. She left her
Yeah.
induction and then a week
Yeah.
later had her baby, and it was beautiful and it was wonderful. And I can do
Yeah.
that too. So,
Yeah. I did feel really weak
mhm,
uh following her birth, and I think
mhm,
that how I'm viewing it now, this could change over time, but is
mhm,
that with like what happened the week before, like losing blood
mhm,
early and then having the labor, that might have been a little bit too much for my body.
right.
But the thing is, I didn't seek medical care.
Mhm,
It just took a while for me to feel more normal, and
right.
it was just important for me. I think the most important thing I did was like make sure that I ate food even if I didn't feel like it.
Mhm,
And like everything was taken care of for
mhm,
like my older child was taken care of, and then I had postpartum support um in my home, which is like the
mhm,
best thing that I did. It was so lovely to have somebody who could like really see me and witness me, and that
mhm.
was like-minded and like sees birth and postpartum the way that I do. And
Yeah.
like my nervous system would feel so much better when she was around. So
Totally. Yeah. And
yeah.
how often, because you were single mothering now with this new baby and your elder daughter, so how often did you have that postpartum care come in, or did you have like family members mixed in between that as well?
So
Or I guess you said you're living under your parents or under
yeah,
your mom as well.
yeah.
Okay.
So she postpartum, I feel like she came maybe a couple times a week for maybe a few weeks. Like she came 2 to 3 days a week. And then yeah, I live with my parents. So my sister came to like basically live here for a month to take care of my daughter. And so she was taken care of by my parents, and like, they all they all helped like bring me food and take care of her. So I didn't really have to worry about that, which was amazing. Because honestly, if I didn't have that support, I wouldn't have considered having a second child. There's no way that I would be able to like mother my older child, you know, in that early postpartum time and do the breastfeeding and all that. So they really
Yeah.
helped me a lot.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, your stories are just so, so amazing. I'm so grateful that they get to be put into this movement. So,
I'm so glad I got to share them.
yeah, thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And is there anything else that you wanted to share in for either one of your birth stories about those journeys?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Hmm. Wow.
That's pretty
Okay.
much it.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. And if any women are listening to this and they'd like to speak to you, maybe specifically about how you um, use the AMA to get out of your induction, or just to speak to you of being a first-time mom choosing free birth, or whatever questions they may have for you, how can women get in touch?
They can contact me on Instagram. I'm the Primal Dyad. So that's my account. I focus more on breastfeeding there,
Mhm.
but yeah, they want to reach out for whatever reason they can.
Mhm. Oh, excellent. Okay, I'm going to put that in the show notes. This is so lovely to talk to you, and I'm so excited to get this out. So thank you very, very much for sharing everything.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sisters, so much for listening to this episode of the Free Birthing Color podcast. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one in a primal activation session, donate to the podcast, or to have your story featured here or in the blog, go to primalwomanportal.com for all the information to do so. Did you want to connect with our guest speaker? You can find all her information linked within the show notes. And if you have time, please subscribe, write a review, and tell a friend to have a listen so that this podcast and these stories of women birthing in their total power can be shared far and wide. Don't forget to check out the show notes for information on the Earth Daughters Women's Festival, the Breach Without Borders workshop, and much more. New episodes drop every Thursday morning, so stay tuned for the next amazing story to be shared on any platform that you prefer to listen to your podcasts on, or watch these episodes on the Free Birthing in Color YouTube page. And remember, your voice and your story matters. So if you're a woman of color or an Indigenous woman who's had a wild pregnancy and or birth outside of the medical system, submit your story, because it's so important that your voice is heard and celebrated in your radical journey of pregnancy, birth, and motherhood.